Hey guys, welcome back to Recreational Sniper. This morning I thought I would take a few minutes to talk about some 10mm reloading. So, I shoot 10mm quite a bit. It's actually the first cartridge I ever learned how to reload, and I've started shooting 10mm again. I was shooting Glocks. I had a Glock 20. Just a regular one, and then eventually I upgraded to the Glock 40 MOS, but now I'm shooting a SIG X10, the P320 X10, and I really like it. It's way more comfortable to shoot than the Glocks were, in my opinion, for my hands and stuff. But anyways, I was embracing my inner FUD a couple weeks ago and picking up range brass, and I noticed there's a bunch of 10mm laying on the ground. But for whatever reason, if I can get this to focus, there we go. For whatever reason, I found a whole bunch of this brass that has basically all the same dents in it, right at the mouth. I mean, you can see how crazy that is. And there's just, I've got, I don't know, 10 or 15 pieces of it that's like that. So I'm wondering what kind of firearm they were shooting this brass out of. Now, before you jump to conclusions, I will let you know that this brass was not in any walking path area where somebody might have stepped on it and bent the cases. And it was not actually on any area that had concrete, so the brass was not getting ejected onto concrete and denting the cases like that. This brass was actually picked up out of the grass and off to the side of an area where, you know, there's no walking path and really no reason for anybody to be walking there. So and it's just kind of weird that all the cases have nearly identical dents in it like that. So I'm wondering what kind of firearm this 10mm brass was being shot from, because it's kind of an odd thing there. I've never seen before those kind of dents on 10mm brass. So I'm wondering if it possibly was a PCC, like a pistol caliber carbine or something like that, some sort of variation of one of those that's just really hard on brass when it ejects. But if you guys know what kind of firearm causes that kind of damage to 10mm brass, let me know down in the comments below. But aside from that, I'm going to do my best to salvage this brass, which I think I can. I think that I can actually salvage this brass. I don't think, it might not last very many reloads. As long as it doesn't actually crease the brass, I think I should be able to salvage it, and it'll shoot just fine. So some of the bullets that I'm going to be loading in this brass are these Barnes. If I can get it to focus there. These are Barnes. It's a MLE, so it stands for Military or Law Enforcement. Tactical bullets. These are copper only. They're solid copper hollow points, and they are 125 grain TAC XP bullets. So again, I'm going to try to get that to focus for you guys. You can see that these have like a really big, gnarly hollow point in them. I mean, it's just insane how big the hollow point is on those. Like, there is no chance of having that situation where a t-shirt or something like that will stop the hollow point up and cause it not to expand, because I mean, you could fit 5 or 6 grains of powder in there probably. But anyways, so I got my Lee 10mm dies here, and in the paperwork these actually have a little load data for 40 Smith & Wesson and 10mm auto as well. But we are again loading 10mm, so we're going to focus on that load data. And I was looking out through here, is, in times past when I was loading 10mm a lot, shooting it a whole bunch, I always used long shot powder because for me it seemed to give the best performance of any powder that I've ever tried for 10 millimeter. So it's kind of interesting to see that in their little bit of load data they've got here in the paperwork with the dies, is that there's only 2 spots where they showed load data for long shot, and one was with a 200 grain jacketed bullet, and one was with a 180 grain jacketed bullet. So I'm gonna, I guess, have to turn to the internet and find me some load data for the 125s, because I know in the past I loaded 125s with the Hoshin's long shot, and I believe I also tested it with 800X. But that was so long ago. That was back when I really first started reloading. You know, probably nearly 10 years ago, and I have no idea where any of that load data is at anymore. I know it was written down somewhere, but you know, I've moved like twice since then, so all of that stuff's gone. But I'm gonna load these 125 grain hollow points up for it, and then I also have some 155 grain XTPs and some 200 grain XTPs, and I'm gonna load them up and shoot them and see which ones I really like the most, because this year I'm actually gonna try to really just pistol hunt this year for deer hunting. Here in Arkansas it's legal to pistol hunt, and 10 millimeter is plenty big to take out a deer at, you know, relatively close range. You know, where it's producing 357 Magnum power basically, and you can even shoot bigger bullets than what 357s do most of the time, or 38. So I can run a 200 grain bullet in my 10 millimeter up to 1200 feet per second or so, maybe a little bit higher than that if I kind of want to push it. But you know, the original FBI load data for 10 millimeter when it was being developed for them was a 200 grain bullet at 1200 feet per second. That was out of a 5-inch barrel. That was their load data. Now these days you buy a commercial grade, any of the commercially available 10 millimeter loads out there, like you can get the just 180 grain FMJs or something like that, like the Soleil and Below, or however you want to pronounce that, or like some Blazer that, like I was shooting this past weekend. I was shooting some Blazer 180 grain FMJs. All of that commercially available stuff is really like neutered down. You know, it's not even really full power 10 millimeter. It's more like a spicy 40 cal, because those, if you shoot them over the chronograph, like out of my SIG with a 5-inch barrel, the 180 grains are running like 1100 to 1150 feet per second, and real load data, if you look it up, like even in here, if you look at the load data for that 180 grain using the long shot, we're showing 1287 feet per second. So 1300 feet per second basically for a 180 grain is their max load in this paperwork. So, you know, the commercially available stuff is running nearly, you know, 150 to 200 feet per second slower than it actually should be for like real 10 millimeter power. So if you're gonna shoot 10 millimeter and you really want to know what it's capable of, you're gonna have to reload it, or buy really expensive ammunition that's kind of made in small batches, such as offerings from Buffalo Bore or Underwood, those kinds of companies. Those guys will make full power 10 millimeter loads and sell them to you. So, but you know, if you're buying that ammunition, you're looking at maybe paying $1.50 to, you know, $2 a round for it, and you get like a box of 20 and it costs you $40. So, or you know, $35-$40 there. So to really save money on that, you're gonna have to reload. There's no way around it. Now, I will say these particular projectiles right here, these Barnes TAC XP bullets, these projectiles are about $1 a piece. I want to say they're right around $1 a piece. There's about you get a box of 40 of them, and I believe it costs $40, depending on where you get them from. You might see them a little cheaper than that, maybe a little bit more expensive. But for me, if I'm loading a specific round for hunting wise or something like that, I know I'm not going to shoot a whole lot of. I'm going to load up and test about 20 rounds, and then I'm going to, with that, I should get, with pistols, they're not as difficult to load as, rifle ammunition, getting them just right. So once it gets to the velocity I want it to be, and I'm thinking for 125 grains is going to be around 1,500 feet per second or so, I'll just load them all to that load data, and that'll just be the load data for that particular bullet. And the same thing with like the 200 grain and the 155 grain XTPs. Once I get them to the speed that I want them, that's it. I just load everything to that spec, however much powder it takes, whatever bullet seating depth it takes, and that's it. And I don't have to mess with it ever again. I'll just keep that load data recorded and all the specs for that bullet, and that's what I'll do. But the main thing is I got to make sure it's all going to run effectively through the firearm. I'm not going to have any jamming issues and that sort of thing. So that's the main hurdle there when it starts to reloading pistol ammunition. So with that being said, I do plan on hunting with this handgun, and I've not quite decided whether I'm going to hunt with the 125s loaded to about 1,500 feet per second, or if I'm going to go with something like the 200 grainers loaded to about 1,200 feet per second, because I do believe the 200 grainers are going to offer quite a bit more penetration than the 125s, but the 125s are going to dump energy faster, and they're probably going to expand quite a bit bigger if you look at the design of these bullets. So we'll see. We'll do some testing. I'll get my load data figured up, and then I'll test them on some different mediums and see which one I think performs the best for hunting purposes. That's going to allow me to make the most effective lethal shot on the deer or the animal. And that's probably what I'm going to go with, whatever that ends up being, whether it's this bullet or if it's one of the big 200 grainers or even the 155 grainer. But I do know that looking into this load data here, they do not list any load data for a 125. They've got it for 135s, and they're showing with shooting silhouette powder apparently offered the highest velocity with that they've got here with that weight bullet at 1,575 feet per second for a 135. So I may be able to squeeze a little bit lighter bullet here, maybe, depending on how it works out. I may or may not be able to squeeze a little more speed out of it than that. Might get it over 1,600 feet per second, but that remains to be seen. So anyways, I just wanted to kind of talk with you guys about the 10mm auto and my plans and purposes for it, and we'll see you next time in the next video. Thanks for watching.